Hello doctors, hope you are all well and safe. Today I am going to discuss few MCQs in cardiovascular critical care series, which may be very useful for those who are preparing for various exams in critical care medicine. Followed by that there will be 2 or 3 more MCQs at the end of this video for you to solve, and please answer the questions in the comment box, which I am going to flash in the end of video. So let's start this refreshing discussion with MCQs. Question number 1. A 70-year-old man weighing about 68 kg with a history of hypertension presented to the emergency department with weakness, confusion and a productive cough. His initial chest X-ray is consistent with the left upper lobe pneumonia and he is hypotensive on initial examination. He is fluid resuscitated with 3 liters of normal saline and a central line is placed. He is started on ceftriaxone and azithromycin after blood and sputum cultures were obtained. His white blood cell count is 20,000 and serum creatinine is 1.5 mg per deciliter. After stabilizing the mean arterial pressure above 65 mm of mercury, he is admitted into ICU. But after 2 hours of admission to ICU, the nursing staff notes his blood pressure to be 90/48 mm of mercury with a heart rate of 100 beats per minute. A vasopressor is ordered. What is the next best step? Perform a bedside echocardiogram to look for underlying congestive heart failure or valve motion abnormalities. Switch to 4% albumin for further fluid resuscitation, as he has already received 3 liters of normal saline and is still hypotensive. Or order a CT of the chest, abdomen and pelvis to ensure adequate source control. Or re-examine the patient, assess the urine output and order a bedside ultrasound of the lungs and IVC to assess for fluid responsiveness. So what should be your option over here? See, this is a typical but challenging clinical scenario which every intensivist, every emergency physician encounters during a routine day-to-day practice. This patient is in septic shock. The focus is in the lung, and he has been appropriately managed with early fluid resuscitation, antibiotic administration in the emergency department, and then he was sent to ICU after initial resuscitation. However, hypotension reoccurred and the primary question remains whether this patient requires more fluid or a vasopressor to be started. While there is no perfect single test to answer this question, using a combination of physical examination, ultrasound examination and invasive or non-invasive assessments of fluid responsiveness is very important in this case. Echocardiography may be performed to rule out the cardiac and obstructive cause of hypotension, but it will not answer the question of fluid responsiveness by itself. So therefore, echocardiography is not a correct choice over here. Albumin is a colloid but may be administered if already large amount of crystalloid has been given and failed to maintain the hemodynamics. So giving more fluid would cause more harm to the patient if it is going to lead to pulmonary edema, for which we have to perform a lung ultrasound before giving fluids for B lines which appear before oxygen saturation drops. So it is too early to think about CT scan, and we have to clinically examine and assess the response to antibiotics and hemodynamic resuscitation. Now another thing is lactate clearance, which is not there in the question. It will be very useful investigation. You have to measure the lactate at the time of emergency department admission and again re-measure it after fluid resuscitation and see whether it is clearing or not clearing. If it is clearing, then it's good. If it is not, in the first 24 hours, then you have to think of ongoing sepsis. Some source is there which is not properly controlled. So now we will move on to question number 2. A 50-year-old man with a history of recurrent pyelonephritis was admitted to ICU with urosepsis In view of acute respiratory failure and worsening hemodynamics, his trachea was intubated and mechanical ventilation was commenced. Using assist control, volume control mode of ventilation with tidal volume of 8 ml per kg, idle body weight, respiratory rate of 20 per minute. He is deeply sedated. He is receiving norepinephrine infusion in a dose of 0.1 microgram per kg per minute to maintain mean arterial pressure more than 65 millimeter of mercury. His arterial pressure waveform is as follows. Now, what is the next best step in the management of this patient? 500 ml of bolus of Ringer lactate, or add vasopressin, or no further intervention, or perform a bedside 2D echocardiogram. So, what should be your correct choice over here? So, let me explain this. So, according to the latest surviving sepsis guideline, dynamic indices of volume responsiveness or fluid responsiveness to guide the fluid therapy in patients with sepsis is recommended. Dynamic parameters of fluid responsiveness are calculated based on measurement of change in the stroke volume, that is stroke volume variation resulting from the respiratory variations in the left ventricular preload. So, what happens when we breathe? There is a respiratory variation and change in the intrathoracic pressure that leads to changes in the left ventricular preload, and also it can cause increase in the stroke volume. So, if the stroke volume increases significantly from the intrathoracic pressure induced increase in the preload, administration of external fluid will also have the same effect. So, that is the rationale, and that is called cardiopulmonary interaction, which we are using to predict the fluid responsiveness. So, now it is quite difficult to calculate or to measure the stroke volume. So, changes in the pulse pressure are obtained from an arterial line tracing, which is commonly used as a surrogate. It has been shown that pulse pressure variation greater than 15% are associated with positive response to fluid challenge. Conversely, PPV less than 10%, no hemodynamic benefit to volume saturation is seen. So, remember this fact that PPV more than 15% is always related to a fluid responsiveness. These measurements are best validated in patients who are paralyzed chemically or deeply sedated, and also it is very important that patients should be on the positive pressure ventilation, as in our case. Pulse pressure variation is calculated based on a formula which is given over here. Now, patient in the question has a pulse pressure variation of 41% based on the figure. This favors administration of more intravenous fluid, hence option A is correct. Now, we will move on to question number 3. A 70-year-old female patient is admitted to the ICU with hypotension and shortness of breath. She received 2 liters of crystalloid over 2 hours. However, continues to be hypotensive and requires moderate doses of phenylephrine to maintain mean arterial pressure above 65 millimeter of mercury. Also, she is on high flow nasal oxygen therapy with the FiO2 of 60% and flow of 50 liters per minute. Her past medical history is significant for congestive heart failure and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, COPD. A bedside ultrasound is performed to assess fluid responsiveness. The following image is obtained. So, this is the image. Now, which among the following is true regarding the volume responsiveness in this patient? A. Patient is fluid responsive. B. Unable to interpret fluid responsiveness. C. Patient is fluid overloaded. Or D. Patient is fluid responsiveness to 5% albumin. So, what should be correct option over here? Now, remember that the association between the fluid responsiveness and IVC diameter and collapsibility on ultrasound is well studied in various studies and meta-analysis, in which it has been shown that IVC collapsibility is not associated with volume responsiveness in a spontaneously breathing patient. It has been validated for a patient who is on mechanical ventilator, paralyzed and sedated patient. Okay. So, this is especially true for the patient in the respiratory distress. So, in respiratory distress there is an increased work of breathing which creates large swing in the intrathoracic pressure, creating a collapsing IVC which will not be reliable. On the other hand, lack of collapsibility cannot rule out the fluid responsiveness as well. So, IVC collapsibility cannot be used to measure volume responsiveness in this patient. So, that is all. Now, there are further MCQs in this video, and I hope that you will read these MCQ and answer in the comment box, and I will try to give you the correct answer with the rationale. So, my idea is to make you more smart before going for a critical care examination, and hope that the series in the cardiovascular critical care will be very helpful. And this time we have discussed the fluid responsiveness. Next time we will come up with interesting an important topic in cardiovascular critical care series. So, thank you so much for your attention. Have a good day.